In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of my carp fishing obsessions. These are the things that I pay an awful lot of attention to in my fishing, and I believe that they make a massive difference to my results. So the first subject I want to tackle is bait. When I started carp fishing 20 years ago, I was always interested to know, well, what you caught on, mate? What's working? You know, I got my tackle shelf and I'd always be taking, 6 different pots of pop-ups and 3 different flavours of bottom bait because I had absolutely no clue what was going to work. And I didn't have a lot of confidence in any of the baits that I was using because I wasn't catching much. As the years went on, I began to realise that bait flavour itself actually makes no difference. What I'm looking at when I'm choosing what bait to use is the protein level, because a protein level is a really easy way of understanding how nutritious that is going to be for the fish. For the main part of the season, I'd be looking to use a fairly high protein bait, something that's actually going to make it worthwhile the fish feeding on that. During the winter, I'd be looking to use a lower protein bait because the fish aren't moving much, the temperatures are lower. Carp really struggle to digest high levels of protein in the winter, so there's just no point in giving them a high protein food at this period of time. By only having 2 baits, I have less to buy, less to store, and it just makes it simple. I take this element of doubt away from my fishing. While we're on the subject of bait, let's have a quick chat about hook baits, specifically hook bait buoyancy. Now, I know a lot of you guys spend a lot of time and trouble critically balancing baits and stuff. I've had a little go at this, and to be honest, I've never found that it makes any difference to my fishing whatsoever. My default choice for 95% of the time is just a straightforward bottom bait straight out the bag. The only times I use something else is when I've got a very good reason to do so. If I'm fishing a very large water, public water or a lake or something where there's nuisance fish, could be poisson chat or crayfish, then I'll use a dedicated hardened hook bait, but only if I have to. Pop-ups, sure I use pop-ups, but I only use pop-ups when I know I want to present something above the silt, for example, because I don't want it to get kind of buried in the leaf matter. Yeah, I'll use pop-ups, but if I'm fishing a rock hard open water spot that I know is super clean, then do I want a blatant pop-up sat in the middle of that spot? No, not really. I'd just rather have a bottom bait. Wafters, I've experimented with wafters, and again, I use them from time to time. Do I feel that I'd have caught more carp if I'd have just stuck to a straightforward out the bag bottom bait? No, not really. I've just never been able to justify their use. The next subject I want to cover is rigs. I've come up with a selection of really simple, very effective rigs that I'll use for a variety of situations, and when faced with that situation, that's the rig I use. I never kind of doubt myself, think, well, maybe I should have used that rig today, and it's just a question of putting it in the right place. What I'm really careful of is the materials I use to construct the rig, how I construct it, and I test every rig quite vigorously to make sure that there is no chance of failure. The last thing I want to do is get that pickup that I've been working for and for the rig to let me down. I know that Ronnie rigs and rigs that incorporate, an element of spin right down close to the bait are very, very popular. It's just something that I've never really bothered with. I just don't feel that that's necessary in order to catch carp. And I really don't believe that adding an element of spin is going to catch me more carp. As an ex-tool maker, I must confess I am absolutely obsessed with hook sharpness. And this is a good thing. It's so easy to say, that'll do, nick them onto your finger and believe that it's going to catch carp. If you're fishing a runs water and the fish are soft-mouthed, then it might do. But the harder the waters you fish, the more and more hook sharpness becomes fundamental. What am I advocating? I'm advocating literally using a hooker chuck. Now, that might seem absolutely mad. But I tell you what, it is the fastest way of becoming a better carp angler. There's no striking involved in carp fishing. We rely on our rigs to do the job and hook the carp themselves. The more pressured the fish that you fish for, the better these fish are at spitting out rigs. On certain waters like Beausoleil, only a very, very sharp hook will do, because we've got a hard lake bottom and the fish's mouths are hard, and this water's taught me just how absolutely vital hook sharpness is and what a massive difference it can make to anyone's angling. What I don't obsess over is hook patterns. Basically nowadays I use two patterns, and I only use two patterns because there's a difference between the eye size of one versus another. Let's have a chat about mainline. Now, I get loads of questions through about what colour of mainline for various different situations. To be honest, I don't pay any attention to what colour the mainline is at all. I fish with everything from brown, green, clear. In the same lake, in the same scenario, do I catch more on one colour versus another? No. The one thing I obsess about with mainline is that it's correctly loaded in the first place, and that I'm always doing everything I can to minimise line twist. Line twist can be really dodgy. The slightest amount of twist, you can get a frap up round the tip, or if you're boating rigs out, excess line twist can get caught round the rings. If you've dropped a rig and you're rowing back to a spot, you've got a load of twist, you get it caught round the rings and you get a take before you even get back to shore, which has happened to me. If your main line is horrible and twisted, then you can be in a world of hurt real quick and it can cost you a fish. The other thing I pay attention to is making sure that there's no loops of line sticking out of the spool. One loop, it can cause a crack off on the cast, which can be very dangerous. Also, if you crack off on the cast, then you're leaving a live rig. That's a rig with a hook and a bait in the water. Before I start fishing, I'll always be walking out my lines, checking for nicks or damage. The slightest bit of damage is going to cost you a chance. The one thing I really don't pay much attention to is the rated breaking strain on any spool. The only thing that matters to me is what diameter the line is. It's no good believing that just because it says 15 pound on the spool and it's thinner than another manufacturer that also says 15 pound, the thinner line will have a lower knot strength. It's quite that simple. Let's have a chat about bite indication. This is not what sort of alarms you use or bobbin configuration. This is about knowing whether I've been done or not. It doesn't really bother me how many I catch. What bothers me is when I know I've been done, because I know that there's something that I could have done to convert that to a proper take and a carp on the bank. So I use various tricks in my angling in order to understand whether I've been done. I came up with this telltale creation, which can be used for running rigs, be it swivel or inline. There's also a trick you can use with blowback tubes as well, or blowback rigs. The multi-rig itself gives you some bite indication, because if you do get an aborted take, then that D loop will move on the hook and you can see that you've been done. By incorporating these little tricks, it helps you solve the carp angling puzzle. If you're used to only ever fishing with semi-fixed lead clip type rigs, you're probably being done an awful lot, far more times than you can possibly imagine, and you'll probably have no idea that it's even going on because you're getting no beeps or no bangs or no nothing. The sort of fish that I fish for are used to picking up rigs and getting rid of them. You know, they'll literally sit over a rig and you might get an individual beep like once every minute or 5 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that after a period of time has elapsed, I'll be suspicious that that's happening, and I'll wind down and lift into a carp that's been trying to do me. So I get this quite a lot here because these fish have been used to being fished for an awful lot. So paying attention to whether you're being done or not is a real edge. It'll help you work out what's going on the places that you go fishing.